Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of my podcast. My name is Alex Macale. I am your realtor here in Toronto, Ontario, where I talk about real estate, life, personal development, life of Filipino here in Canada, all the way down to your day-to-day gossips. So today we're going to talk about an article that was featured on the global news. It's the title is "How Your Home Could Be Fraudulently Sold Without You Knowing." So this property was apparently sold without the property owners knowing about it. Can that really happen? Let's find out. So we have an article here. So let's go through this article here with the global news and see what really went wrong on this transaction. So let's start. Oh,
If you are type
hold on. Let's try it again.
It was January 2022. As fewer properties were being listed and market conditions were tightening in the GTA, this is when police say Toronto homeowners, away on a business trip, discovered their home was sold without their consent or knowledge.
So right off the bat, they successfully sold this property using the fake identity. So somehow somebody had managed to sell the property without the presence of a homeowner. Can this really happen? I guess it happens. Now, in this scenario, who is to blame? Is it the seller? Is it the seller's realtor? Is it the buyer? Is it the buyer's realtor? Let's dissect it. So let me go through you guys what happened when a realtor, such as like myself, when we're selling a property, when we're putting a property for sale, such as like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you on the step-by-step process on what we really do at the back end when we're selling a property such as like this. Okay. So number one, we as a realtor, before we even take your house for sale, when we call you, the very first thing that we would do first is that we would go through the registry record. So as a realtor, before we even take your property to sell, the very first thing that we do is we look at the property on the registry record of the last people who owns the property, and when was the last time the property was transfer had a transfer of ownership. So that's the very first thing that we do. Most of the time, if the home seller is not even present, we don't even bother going to the property if the decision maker is not going to be there when we show up on the appointment. Why? Because it's just waste of our time. We would rather spare our time and spare the seller's time if they're not even ready to commit, right? So we don't even show up to the property, right? Then let's just say, for example, if the appointment was a genuine appointment, and and the home seller will be there. So the first thing that we do when we get to meet the person, the homeowner in a face to face, the very first thing that we do is we ask them for identification. Okay, so before we came to the property, we already know who the owner of the property is. So it's just a matter of cross-referencing the identification that they provided us against the name it was written on the registry. So right there and then, we will be able to catch if there's a discrepancy on your identification. Okay, so let's continue.
Police are now looking for these two people they allege pretended to be the homeowners, hired a real estate agent, and listed the Etobicoke property for sale. The home sold to new owners who took possession. Investigators say the legitimate owners never found out their property had been sold until several months later. So,
So the homeowner never found out that the property has been sold several months later. So the owner of the property never really found out that their home was has been sold after several months later. So these people must have been out of the country. Now, what I don't understand is that as a homeowner, you didn't realize that not paying your rent, your mortgage for several months, would that send a red flag to you? Well, I guess this property is fully paid up. So, right? So, who knows? Let's continue.
How can something like this happen? This real estate expert says it may be more common than one might think. Somewhere along the
So, this research expert says that it's much more common than you think. So, this guy said that it's much more common than you think. Well, let me tell you something. This is not common. In order to pull this off, there's got to be a high level of sophistication of identity fraud happening at the back end in of this transaction. Um, because in order to pull off such a transaction like this, transfer of ownership transaction like this, it involves two lawyers, and usually it involves two different mortgage lenders if there's a mortgage on this property. So yeah, so this is not something that is common. It's very hard to pull off a transaction like this. This is a high level sophistication of fraud. Let's continue.
a person with access to the land registry system, whether it's a lawyer or another person, transferred the title from the present homeowners to someone else illegally. That
So somebody have an access to the owner's personal information, right? So somewhere along the line, somebody have a key and transfer the ownership of this property in the land registry system, right? Now, for this to happen, if this property have a mortgage, you got to go to the mortgage lender first, right, and acquire a control of ownership of this property. So if this property have a mortgage, um, for example, in this case, this is where it's first going to happen first, right? So if this property have a mortgage on it, this is where the it first going to happen, and not in the land registry, because you cannot just transfer a name without having to discharge a mortgage. Now, if this mortgage, if this property, now if there's a discharge of a mortgage, then as a person owning this property, the mortgage or the bank or the lender, they will notify you first, unless you're not checking your account, right, your bank account for several months, right? Yeah, let's continue.
registry system, Ron Alfonso says, is administered and owned by Terranet on behalf of the Ontario government. Real estate lawyers and others who are authorized to transfer titles and sell houses have access to it through specific key codes. Their key
So yeah, the lawyer usually have an access to a codes in order for them to transfer the ownership of the property electronically. Yes, the lawyer can transfer ownership of the property electronically. Yeah, that is true. But before the lawyer can even initiate it, the lawyer has to check first, as the certain condition, especially on the mortgage side, right? So before the lawyer can transfer an ownership of a property, they have to go through mortgage instructions from the lender, right? So they have to meet certain conditions first, um, in order for them to successfully transfer ownership of the property, right? Yeah, so let's continue.
is taken by somebody else or copied by somebody else or misappropriated in some way, that person has access to the system and can do whatever they want. They can transfer one house or 100 houses. And Alfonso says, thanks to COVID precautions, this type of fraud is relatively easy to pull off.
This type of fraud is easy to pull off. Yeah, I guess if you have the lawyer's access code, right? So so right there it tells you that that there's a fingerprint of a lawyer's access code, right? So that's where it came from, I guess, right? Yeah, let's continue.
Clients need to go to a lawyer's office when buying a home to sign documents, answer questions, and present ID. Now you can do what is called DocuSign or electronic signing online. You can easily go into Photoshop, just copy a passport, change a picture here and there. The lawyer's going to accept them at face value. In the Etobicoke.
So so he said that you can just do a Photoshop and DocuSign, and the lawyer would take it at the face value. Really? At the very least, the lawyer had to do a face-to-face meeting, whether it's via Zoom or any electronic um, meeting that they have, right? If a lawyer don't ask you to come in a face-to-face meeting, I would not use that lawyer. And a lawyer will only do a DocuSign um, or make you sign a document after they have ID you. The same goes with us as a realtor. Before we even throw you a DocuSign or 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 electronic signing, we gotta go through first of your identification. We gotta have some sort of a face-to-face meeting first, um, and we have to fill up that thing called FinTrack in order for us to do a DocuSign. So a DocuSign and electronic signing, it didn't start when the COVID-19 is. Even before the COVID-19, the lawyer has the ability to do electronic signing. So as we realtor, right? But in order for you to have a DocuSign or signed by the lawyer, you have to do authentication first. They have to make a lawyer had to ID you first in order for them to take your identification at the face value, right? Yeah, let's move on. Let's continue.
Police have not released the names of the accused, just these two photos. Global News reached out for more information, but police, remaining tight lipped, only directed all queries back to the release. As for how homeowners and buyers can protect themselves against this type of fraud, purchase title insurance.
Mhm.
That protects the buyer against fraud, illegal transfer of title, a whole range of items. Kayla McLean, Global News.
Yeah, it's actually true that it's very important for homeowners to take a title insurance. Um, Usually, the lawyer would offer it during your signing when you're signing your closing documents. I have some client who tried to refuse it, thinking that it's just an extra cost for them. But this is actually because they think that it's very rare things like this would happen, right? But in reality, this is actually the most important component of your transaction, of your real estate transaction, because even if you have a lawyer who would sign up on the transfer of your ownership, that lawyer cannot 100% guarantee that it's a fraud safe, right? And if you don't have the title insurance, um, in in this case, for example, you will need to hire um, or acquire a litigation lawyer and investigator, which can be very expensive, right? And another thing that a title insurance would protect you guys is that it will protect you if there's a dispute of your property. For example, land of your land, right? For example, if your neighbor trying to encroach your property, or if the city is trying to build something within your own property line, right? Then you have to resort to your survey, and if your survey has a discrepancy, then you can fall and like resort to this title insurance. So guys, always take this title insurance whenever you're doing or trading in a real estate, whether when you're buying uh, a real estate. It's very important to have this title insurance. So, guys, if you like this type of content, please hit that subscribe button below, and I will promise I will do my best to give you more content like this in the future. See you guys next time.